Okay, so I see we're 1 minute past the hour, so now's probably a good time to start before we lose too much time. Firstly, just a big thank you and hello to everyone who's joined the session as a starting point. Really appreciate your time. We know this RCS and particularly Apple and RCS has been big news for quite some time, so it's really great to see so many people wanting to join the session and to have such an excellent panel for the session as well. We've got some really kind of excellent guests on this webinar, experts in their field, but are also bringing perspectives from different areas of the ecosystem, which I think is really important. A couple of brief admin points. Please do feel free to add chats or add questions into the chat. Please do feel free to. The lovely Dea is behind the scenes helping us to collate those and sharing those in with us as well. So please do feel free to share your comments and questions, and we'll try and address those as we go through the session, and if not at the end, if we have the time. You'll also note there's a QR code in the top left, so please do feel free to use that. That leads to a contact form if you want to share your details so we can pick up with you after the fact. What we want to do this session, so really want to take the opportunity to discuss RCS in light of the context of Apple's announcement, which feels like a long time ago now, back in November last year, around the support for the channel, and really start to explore what that means for RCS and RCS business messaging kind of more specifically. So we're going to find out from Alexander, Charlotte and Martin their perspective as to what it means for the ecosystem, the brands in the ecosystem and other players and carriers and the like. So before kind of digging into that in a little bit of detail, it's worth just maybe summarising the situation, summarising what we know, what we don't know, what we think we know, where we are right now, right? So we know iOS 18, which was released in September, supported RCS between users, so purely peer-to-peer messaging in certain markets. So 5 in Europe and 2 in North America. And most of the carriers in those markets. So in Europe, that was France, Germany, Spain, the UK, and Belgium. And as I say, most carriers within those markets. We understand that 18.1 will also now support business messaging. So that really does start to unlock, or maybe, shall I say, open the door for business messaging via the RCS channel to iOS users. How that's going to roll out, again, maybe there's some secrets that we may explore on this session, but to a certain extent, that's maybe irrelevant. What we do know is that door has been opened, and so if we look forward to maybe the next 6 to 9 months, we can start to see and expect that the growth of the channel, and really that's what we want to explore a bit, and what that really means for us and for the ecosystem. So without kind of getting on too far, I think I'm maybe taking too much time from the guests we have. They're the specialists here. I want to firstly give them the opportunity to introduce themselves and maybe say a little bit about who they are, what their role is, a bit about their background and experience in RCS, and maybe just to share a little bit about what their first reaction was back in November. I think about where everyone was when the moon landings, now where everyone should know where they were when RCS was announced on Apple. It's that big for mobile, shall we say. So maybe if they can explain what their first thoughts and first reactions were. If you don't mind, ladies first. Charlotte, please.
Okay, so my name is Charlotte Palfrey, and I'm a senior analyst within Omdia's advanced messaging and communications team. I've worked with mobile content in one way or another since 2011. And while I didn't cover it at the time, I remember after MWC 2012, join being a huge topic of conversation in the office I worked in at the time. I remember being very skeptical. I actually started my own coverage of RCS back in 2017. The following year, I worked on our first RCS forecast at Omdia, and I've led those ever since. So really, like the last 7 years or so, I've spent trying to really get to grips with RCS, what it means for telcos, what it means for enterprises, and all in the messaging space. My first reaction to the Apple announcement, I think, was finally. It's been a long time coming, and I've had egg on my face a few times by doing our big end of year prediction as this will be the year that Apple finally join, and they haven't. So thank you, Apple, for finally joining and making my predictions come true.
Brilliant. Thanks, Charlotte. And thank you. When I first heard the word finally, I wondered where the word was going. So because we're not a late night webinar. So thank you for the word finally. That's brilliant. Martin, please, if you could introduce yourself to the audience as well.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. I'm Martin, so I'm product manager at Digitaleo. Digitaleo is a local marketing SaaS solution based in France that helps brands and retail chains organize their local marketing. And we are positioned as an all-in-one marketing solution. And about RCS, we were the first to launch an RCS campaign in France back in 2019, and it's now an increasingly regular type of campaign that we manage for our customer. So I'm here to share with you some of our success stories and also our vision following the Apple announcement.
Thanks so much, Martin. And finally, Alexander, to you, if you can introduce yourself, please.
Thank you, Dave. So I'm Alexander. I'm the responsible at Deutsche Telekom for RCS business messaging, but I'm also privileged to talk for Vodafone and Telefonica today because we are working very closely on that topic together. And I'm really focused on the German market. So I have some insights for Germany as well as some use cases. And if I heard about the Apple launch, I was very happy because it means a lot for us, especially for the whole topic of reach and all the possible use cases. So it's very, very, very big for us and important.
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks for that. And but thank you to each of you and welcome to the panel. Really, really appreciate your time. I feel like I'm on tele shopping because I've just had a pop-up that tells me someone scanned the QR code. So I feel I should say like the QR codes are going quickly, must get there quick. Prices are dropping or something along those lines. But anyway, I digress a little bit. Maybe starting would be good to start with you. And there's another one. Maybe I should start with you, Charlotte.
Got 5 left.
Yeah, exactly that. So yeah, Charlotte, obviously you've worked quite a lot in terms of kind of predicting and projecting where you see the market going, and maybe there's been egg on all of our faces at times with wondering where RCS will going. I often refer to it as the newest old channel or the oldest new channel, one of those. And maybe this does mark an inflection point, or at least marks the potential of an inflection point in the near future. So it'd be really good to understand how you have kind of, from a professional sense, reacted to the news, how you've seen that affect your projections for the channel, and how you think that you've had to revise maybe some of those projections looking forwards over the next course of the next 2 to 5 years, maybe.
Yeah, so I think it would have been really easy to get super excited and ramp all of our predictions up, but we try to be a bit more cautious than that and actually think about, how consumers and enterprises would be using it and, what kind of effect it would have. So we didn't actually change our forecast on the sort of consumer to consumer side very much at all, because we knew that most of that usage would probably be passive rather than active usage. So people messaging their Android owning friends, and not necessarily knowing or understanding that they're using RCS. They're just going to continue to perform the same behaviors that they always have. We revised our A2P side, so that's enterprise to consumer forecast up a bit towards sort of 2037 mark, but not by a huge amount. Obviously, Apple is a really big win for the ecosystem, but we still need A2P as RBM to be deployed consistently worldwide. We still need enterprises to understand the benefits of RCS, and we still need carriers to onboard the enterprises that are interesting. All of this is going to take time, and I think most of that uptick will be probably in the longer term, towards that end of that 5 year, we'll start seeing some of that growth, because these things do take time. And I think, while it would be lovely to think that, in 18 months, everyone's going to be rocking and rolling, just onboarding is going to take time. Getting that message out is going to take time. And I think you always get some enterprises who hold back. They want to see, has it worked for other businesses? So getting those case studies up and running, showing what it can be done, showing the KPIs that RCS can hit. I think that is the work of the next few years.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really interesting point you say there in terms of the kinds of business that will maybe step aggressively into channel, maybe will be a little bit more reticent and hold back a little bit. Do you, Omdia, have a point of view around what kind of businesses, what kind of use case or verticals you think will be first to kind of step into the channel?
I mean, really, the sort of businesses I want to see start using RCS and RVM straight away are telcos. I think in order to show consumers RCS and in order to show enterprise RCS, I think telcos need to eat their own dog food, and start showing businesses, these are the KPIs you can get. This is what can be done. We can show you because we are using it with our own customers. So, I mean, there's a world of opportunities out there. I think, finance, travel, retail, all that can be really interesting, especially once you fold in AI, use a bit of conversational commerce. You can really support a customer through the entire retail experience. But I think for me, I want to see telcos use it.
Yeah, no, so that's a really good point, and it's absolutely a perfect then segue over to Alexander, who kind of bring in that unique perspective as from a telco. Be really good to understand from you, and I think in the context it's worth highlighting that as a market, Germany is, I certainly position Germany as being a mature market, particularly in relative terms for RCS, not just in terms of whether it be the traffic or the brands, but actually more in terms of the approach of the carriers. They work really collaboratively together, have a very consistent messaging out to the market, which totally simplifies the approach for the likes of ourselves and our brands. But it'd be really good to understand from you, Alexander, whether it be from your perspective and maybe the wider carrier group's perspective, how you reacted to kind of Apple's announcement, what you see that as meaning for the market, and whether you kind of feel the same as Charlotte, that maybe it's less the next 2 years, but more the 5 to 10 years where it starts to get really, really interesting.
Well, as I said, we're working really close together, Vodafone, Telefonica, and we as DT as well. And this makes it possible to create a really high reach, especially for Germany. I can't just talk for Germany right now, but if we see the Apple launch, today we can reach something about 33 million to 35 million handsets. That's an enormous number already, but with the iOS launch of 18.1, what we expect, then we will see a reach of about 65 million handsets in Germany. And that's enormous. And if you compare it to any other messaging service or whatsoever, it's much higher, especially in Germany. And this reach means everything for us, because this means for all the merchants.
Sorry, Alex, apologies, just to jump in there. And what does that mean in terms of a percentage for your market, just to kind of help the audience as well, in terms of that volume?
You're about nearly to 90% of. So wow. The rest is the old handsets, the very old Androids, but the new iPhones, the new Androids, they're all working, and that's the mass market. Yeah. And this is enormous, to be honest. And we're working very briefly for a long time on that to make it happen, and now it is the time. And to talk about relevant industries, what I see is, as Charlotte says, retail is very interesting for all the newsletter cases. What we also see are in insurance companies are really looking for the engagement with their customers. This is what we also see, and moreover, all the new use cases are created right now, maybe for some electric companies to find some solutions to interact or engage customers in a new way. this makes it very interesting that for the whole channel. And combined with this awesome reach, there are many use cases possible. And also, as Charlotte says, drink your own champagne.
Of course.
And we as DT using RBM very intense right now for the last, I would say 2 to 3 years. And what we see are very interesting numbers, especially KPIs, especially conversion rates, opening rates. And of course, compared to SMS, we now have KPIs, not just standard SMS. Right now we're seeing what about the conversion rates? How about the engagement rates? There are so many possibilities to track the campaigns, which makes it so interesting and makes it possible to optimize the messages to make it even better time by time. And this is our perspective. But as Charlotte says, drink your own champagne, and especially as DT, we're using RBM very intense, and we are very satisfied with this channel.
No, that's really interesting to hear, and I think you make a very strong point around the benefits of having those case studies, those proof points that we can hold up and share around the effectiveness of the channel. And again, a really good opportunity to bring Martin into the conversation. As you said, Martin, you were the first business to use the channel in France. So it'd be really good to hear from you in terms of the kind of effectiveness and the kind of case studies, the success you've had with the channel so far already, and to get your point of view, what you think the next couple of years bring, whether it be the near term and looking a little bit further afield as well.
Yeah, since 2019, we already have some proof of success. And what is important to mention is that every time we have run an RCS campaign, it was systematically combined with a SMS plus link campaign in order to compare. And each time, in terms of open rate, engagement rate, conversion rate, RCS has always been better than RCS campaign. For example, to give you a concrete example, we operated an RCS campaign for a motorcycle dealership to communicate about its open days. With the aim of generating traffic in the dealership. And in terms of results, we obtained a reach of 50%. It was 3 months ago, so this rate is always increasing, but at the time it was 50%. And among this 50%, we obtained an open rate of 80%, which is good regarding the fact that this kind of messages is totally new for consumers. But above all, the RCS click rate was three times higher than the SMS campaign. And in terms of cost per click, we also achieved to get a cost per click 10% lower with the RCS campaign compared to the SMS campaign with the link. So these are very good proof of the success that can bring RCS to brands. And to conclude, this client broke a traffic record for his event, which can be partly attributed to this new campaign format.
Yeah, and that's really interesting. I'd like to expand on that maybe a little bit, if that's okay, Martin. Because I think there's always well, firstly, to say that if you're achieving a delivery rate of around 50%, again, there's 50% that are getting SMS, and so the equivalent effectiveness that you're seeing on just half will only increase when as kind of iOS numbers increase in the market, which is going to be really interesting to see. But it'd be good to understand from you if you see that there's always the danger of maybe a one-off or the first case study being a little bit of a novelty factor. It's new for users. They won't be familiar to seeing kind of richer messaging, buttons and the like, those quick responses in via messaging from brands. So and you've been in the market for a number of years already. So are you seeing those kind of response rates, those kind of results sustained, or do you see it as being a peak and then there's a tailing off? It'd be really good to understand those kind of brands that may be reusing the channel, ongoing using the channel, and whether they're seeing that kind of that consistent high performance of the channel.
Yeah, I see. I think the main point now is to use also the RCS campaign as a mean to collect data on the consumers and to adapt and adjust the campaign using this data. And it's really a big benefit that we highlight when we talk about RCS campaigns to our clients, because this is also a channel that can be used to collect data, and that can partly justify also the price of this new channel. When it's the first time that a brand want to use this channel to reach its consumers.
That's really interesting, and maybe also from your perspective, Alexander, as you say, you're as a carrier using the channel kind of heavily yourself. Do you see those kind of the kind of performance consistently across repeated activations?
Absolutely. What I have to say is start small would be a good advice. So there are very interesting use cases out there, but start with a small campaign with a highly specific target group would be a good start, I would say. Because what we see is A/B testing is necessary for big campaigns. So we always try to reach opening rates for 97% and above. And so you need a very crisp first sentence, because this sentence will show up on the lock screen. And this sentence have to be very good to reach high opening rates. And you need some training to learn the language of your customer to reach that high conversation rate and opening rates. And so start with a small campaign with a target group and getting better and better. And at the end of the day, you can do the big campaigns for the whole audience, and especially with very, very interesting KPIs. This is what we're all looking for. And if we see the chat already, some questions about pricing and comparison to SMS. It depends on the use case, but RBM could be much cheaper than SMS. It always depends on the campaign, but there are already some models, especially in Germany, called monthly active user. These are very interesting, especially maybe for retail, to do some newsletter cases. And then you have very, very positive ROIs on that. And just to step up on this.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And then touching on that question, Ibrahim has kind of asked around the pricing of RCS in comparison to SMS. And firstly, and I think that's a really good point in terms of kind of framing, kind of maybe reframing the question. It's not maybe just about the cost of the channel versus SMS. You get so much more with the channel and so much more kind of capability in terms of what you can do with buttons, images, and the like. So it's not really a like-for-like comparison, although RCS does support and kind of an SMS equivalent, typically that's called basic message, and is kind of very frequently priced at a similar price point to SMS. But you can do so much more. So I think that the question should really be framed around what's the return on investment, or what's your kind of return on advertising spend. So looking at the effectiveness of the channel alongside the pricing rather than just the pricing. It's not such a commoditized product. And I think that's important to recognize as well, for sure. And just kind of touching on the second part of Ibrahim's question around, is it supported in the Middle East? Yes, for peer-to-peer messaging. So user-to-user messaging will be supported. Apologies. It's supported just on Android in the Middle East. I mentioned those 7 markets that initially it's launched on iOS. That's in Europe and North America. So at the moment, iOS isn't supported in the Middle East, just on Android. And certain markets, certain carriers, I should say, do support business messaging as well. just taking the quick opportunity, I haven't seen the QR code scan for a while. So QVC, the QVC presenter in me tells me that I need to see that. Otherwise, the person in my ear will be telling me off. But maybe, stepping aside from that, and Martin, back to yourself, because of course we're kind of, in many ways, we work in a similar field. We work with partners and we work with clients, so we have obviously more contact with brands. And the interest around the channel, from personal experience, I don't think I've ever been as busy as maybe the last 6 months, and even the last 3 months. So firstly, I'm presuming you've seen the same. You've seen real interest, whether it be from your current clients or potential opportunities who are kind of reaching out to understand more about the channel. And maybe it'll also be good to understand how you see RCS in comparison to other channels. There is a question that's asked around how the kind of features and capabilities that are supported in RCS in comparison maybe to WhatsApp and some of the kind of list picker and options such as there. So it'd be really interested to understand how you're positioning it with your clients in terms of the capabilities, how they may use it, and the like, if that's okay, Martin.
Yeah, for sure. In terms of interest, over the last 6 months, we observed a big increase. When before we operated like one campaign every 6 months, now it's more like one campaign per month at least. And the way we marketed RCS has also played a role, especially about how we position RCS in relation to other digital channels, like you said. And at Digitaleo, we mostly present RCS as a channel that is well fitted for loyalty development, either through marketing campaigns or customer service as well. And the main point is to make people understand that it is the future of mobile marketing, and it will allow much more conversational relationships to be established between brands and their customers, whether in a promotional or in a customer service approach. And compared to traditional channels such as email or SMS in particular, the benefits that we really highlight is the rich media integration, click-to-call integration, as well as the ability to collect data, as I said, on the interest and the preferences of the consumers through conversations. And this data collection is really a big argument. So that's it. And compared to WhatsApp, I think WhatsApp is much more adapted to customer service at this day in France. And when RCS is much more wider in terms of use cases, because we can use RCS either for marketing campaigns and also for customer service. So there is much more possibilities with RCS when WhatsApp is much more focused on customer service. But I talk for the French market at least.
No, that's a really good point. And I think, to close off that question, Carlos, absolutely, RCS would allow for bot options. So whether it be, for example, within a rich card or a carousel card with multiple buttons or suggestion buttons that can follow a message, you really can have a kind of full conversation experience. And Martin touched on some of those kind of additional kind of button actions you can have. What I think is really strong actually to support either a short or a longer kind of conversation experience is that each of those button actions, whether the user has tapped it. So whether it be an open URL, whether it be a call, a phone number, or whether it be an open or share location, knowing whether or not the user has opened that message and or tap that button allows you to take subsequent action. So let's say it's an important message and you want to push them to web and they don't. Maybe you can follow up after a day or so with a subsequent message if they can't. And that becomes really interesting.
And so maybe to extend that, RCS is an asynchronous chat, which means in our case, we're talking to customers and they have to decide, do I want the black or the white handset? Yeah. And maybe I have to talk to my wife. So, okay. And after 2 days, we receive a message. Oh, okay, I decided I want the black one. that easy, and the agent have the possibility to see the whole journey. And I would say in a traditional case, the customer have to start from the scratch and explain it himself and talk about the whole case. And our agent have the possibility via RCS to see the whole journey and can jump on the last one and can say, okay, the black one is on his way. So, and this makes it awesome, creates a nice user experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the ability to have that asynchronous conversation, as you say, is really kind of powerful, particularly in kind of looking at those, as Martin kind of touched on for WhatsApp, those customer support use cases. Absolutely that. Charlotte, kind of extended that thought a little bit back to you. It'd be really good to understand again how you see the traffic in the market. Are you kind of modeling that around kind of existing mobile messaging traffic that's maybe moving from SMS into RCS or WhatsApp or and other OTT channels, or are you seeing kind of new use cases or kind of existing use cases in other channels such as email, outbound call, or even kind of totally net new use cases that just aren't existing at the moment that will kind of start to spring up and move into a kind of more messaging context?
I think it's a bit of a mix, really. I think, when we're still in this sort of early phases of RCS, and I know it, as we said earlier, it feels very strange to say early phases because RCS has been around for quite a long time. I think, what we kind of expect to see is that initially we'll see traffic move either across from RCS, from SMS to RCS, or we'll see enterprises start to explore RCS for new campaigns alongside their existing SMS campaigns. In the much longer term, I would expect to see traffic maybe move across from other channels, like those online channels, phone, and apps as well for things like customer care. And as Alexander says, like some of that is going to be brought in by the fact that RCS can handle the whole customer experience in an asynchronous fashion. And I think RCS is really going to be able to change how customers speak to businesses and how they buy things. I mean, we already see a bit of that in those apps like WeChat over in China, where you can use those apps to buy a lot of services and goods and pay. And I think it's going to be really powerful to have that, being able to explore goods, look at them in that message, be able to select something, pay for it, get those delivery notifications and shipping notifications in the same chat. If there's anything that goes wrong, you can have that in the same chat. I think that's really powerful. And I think that in itself will lead to more traffic being generated, because we'll see that conversational commerce come into it. Businesses will send more messages to consumers. Consumers will send more messages to businesses as everyone gets used to RCS, what it can do and how it can benefit them.
Yeah, no, that's kind of some really interesting points there. I think we know there's any amount of collateral and kind of information out there and to support how the younger generations are moving mobile. It's as simple as that, and are preferring kind of mobile interactions, are preferring kind of messaging interactions, even via their phone. To the extent of we see that kind of behaviour of recording a voice note to send that rather than just picking up the phone, dare I say, and talking. Maybe that makes me sound like a rather old man. I don't know. An interesting, Stanimir kind of asked the question around how we see RCS in competition with Viber and WhatsApp. Particularly looking at maybe some of the penetration of OTT apps across different markets, and absolutely, certain markets are kind of certain OTTs are very dominant. If you look at Ukraine with Viber, for example, and Zalo in Vietnam as well. I think Alexander, you touched on the kind of when iOS rollout has completed, and that those timings will vary in different markets across the globe. So hence why maybe we're looking at, as Charlotte's touched on or talked about, already, maybe it's not 2 years, it's 5 years. Realistically, between iOS and Android, you're looking at, as Alexander said, that's kind of a 90% addressable audience right now. So that's only going to increase. So you'll probably see that RCS will be probably second only to SMS in terms of its ubiquity in markets. And yes, absolutely, some OTs have real kind of high penetration in those markets. But it gives I guess from the ecosystem perspective, it gives choice, which can only be a good thing, I think is fair to say. So kind of Alexander, back to you. We've touched on kind of some of the insights that you've brought already, but it'd be really interesting to kind of understand from your perspective, again, as a carrier and kind of almost a governor of the ecosystem, certainly in your market, or one of the governors of the ecosystem in your market. What kind of opportunities do you see for brands and partners kind of to extend into richer, more conversation experiences? And you've already touched on that now, but it'd really be interesting to see how you think and what your focus is going to be on, over the course of the next 2 to 5 years.
So many possibilities. I guess the good one on RCS is you can really work through the whole customer journey, really from the beginning, talking about awareness, newsletter cases, classical advertising. So replace maybe your email campaign with RCS. The next step could be customer support. If you already know your customer is interested in your product, help him. Talk to the customer. Do you need further information? Use RCS for that. Maybe using AI bots to create new journeys. Then one of my favorite parts is conversational commerce. Use RCS as one-stop shop. So integrate payment, and the customer is able to purchase your product with one click. That easy. And with that case, you should have very good conversion rates because there are no breaks. There's one journey. You can extend your session. There are many possibilities. And at the end of the day, you can use RCS as well to ask your customer about Net Promoter Score. Are you satisfied with our company? Or do me a favor and talk to your friends about our company, and maybe you earn some points or whatsoever. So the possibilities are endless. And at the end of the day, you can use any use case along the whole customer journey. And this makes it so interesting. With one channel, always one contact. And I see there many possibilities, especially in the conversational commerce case. I'm very interested in this case.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you touched on earlier regarding kind of the newsletters, monthly active users kind of billing approach. What kind of activity do you already see with those newsletters use case? I know it's relatively new, but I'd be interested to know how much kind of uptake you've had of that and what kind of how that's being used by brands at the moment.
Yeah, retailers already starting with that to inform their customers about promotions twice or sometimes more often per week, to inform about in a classical way about promotions and some offers. This is what I see today, but in the future there are so many opportunities to build on that and to extend the use case. At the end of the day, you also can use conversational commerce to create a call to action to push the customer to buy it right now, and in a very beauty way. So it always looks very nice. The user is really used to the chat function, to use his mobile phone, and this is today a natural way to interact with the customer.
Sure. And to kind of to carry that forward a little bit, actually, Martin, coming to you a little bit. Questions come in around how the ecosystem, the likes of ourselves, kind of can bring people from SMS to RCS. So, speaking firstly from Infobip's perspective, we have a solution that can automatically upgrade existing SMS traffic to RCS. So our clients don't have to change anything with their integration, their existing traffic they're delivering through us. We can upgrade and send via RCS. So it's effectively becomes a basic message from the get-go. But that's from a technical perspective, that's one thing. But there's also from a convincing the brand, whether it be their brand manager, their marketing manager, their comms product owner, whatever it may be. What kind of conversations are you having, Martin, with your clients and brands, talking to them and encourage them into the RCS channel?
Yeah, I think in light of Apple's announcement, it is certain that this news will change brands' perception about RCS. I really think that RCS is about to move from a best effort channel to a universal channel now. And this will change a lot of things because for some brands, it could be today difficult to invest in a channel that is not universal in terms of reach, while now it will be the case very soon. From what our customer tells us, this will notably help them to save money by no longer having to set up RCS and SMS campaigns simultaneously, but also to save money thanks to a better return on investment for sure, and also potential budget savings by stopping email or print campaigns that are not particularly effective or efficient. Yeah. So that's what they say to us, and I'm really enthusiastic for the coming months.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I think one of the things that I certainly talk a lot about is it's kind of it's exciting, and it's always great to really talk about the big shiny thing that's in the future, and maybe, dare I say, mobile's done that a lot, and has done for a long time. But it's also kind of really important to give our clients, our partners, brands, clear, discrete steps to get there. So I think some of the points you're bringing in there, Martin, and particularly around kind of giving them easy steps into the channel. So it's not a big leap to a business that's maybe sending SMS notifications. Getting from there to full-blown conversational commerce is not a one-step journey. It's a multiple-step journey. So what can we do to enable them and help them along that journey, whether it be kind of easy onboarding into the channel, whether it be kind of pricing models that support that. I think that becomes really important. I think there was a question around actually pricing as well, and it's maybe worth touching on a little bit. Alexander, maybe you kind of come from the carrier side. So I think it's worth highlighting carriers are solely responsible. So whilst kind of the technical backbone of the channel is Google, carriers are responsible for pricing. They own the channel. They're the kind of the gatekeepers and the governors of the channel, and rightly so. I think it being a telecom channel is hugely important, certainly from our perspective. But the question comes from Ibrahim: will the customer get charged for replying? So maybe kind of Alexander, you can kind of touch on that in terms of the user. What's the cost to them? And also kind of maybe expanding on some of the kind of the pricing models that operate at the moment.
Yeah. So look on RCS, we're using the network technology. So it's not like SMS, it's really data. So you need an internet connection via Wi-Fi or mobile, and we're using that data. So if the customer answers to or replies to the session, there are no costs for the end customer, and it depends on the use case. There are different prices for different use cases, and so if the customer has to reply or should reply, this is a session, and it's different pricing in comparison to the monthly active user model, but it's based on the use case. So, but no costs for the customer.
Yeah, and that's a kind of really good point there in terms of, as you say, for the customer, it's kind of effectively free within the data bundle or on their Wi-Fi. But of course, the pricing models from a market perspective are different to SMS. So, Charlotte, kind of coming to you a little bit in terms of your projections aren't just around traffic, but also in terms of kind of the revenue within the ecosystem or what brand spend will be. How are you kind of having to adapt maybe your modeling or kind of factor into your modeling the different pricing approaches, whether it be session-based pricing, MAU-based pricing that potentially carriers may introduce?
Yeah, so it's difficult at the moment because not all carriers have decided how they are going to charge. So we've kind of taken the approach of in our forecasting using what we think is the most likely approach, and that is separating messages into sort of a basic message being charged at similar rates to SMS, and then a richer message, which would be still a single message, again charged at a premium, and then a sort of session or conversation message, which attracts an even larger premium. So that's how we've chosen to forecast. We think that's the most likely model, but we are aware that there are some carriers exploring different models. I would expect it all to shake out over the next few years. And I think it's something that, for RCS to be successful needs to be sorted. And, I think telcos should really come to a consensus, whether that's just on a regional basis or on a country level basis. But I think enterprises need clarity over how things are going to be charged so that they can understand what their ROIs are going to be.
Yeah, and I presume you would kind of echo that, that perspective, Martin, in terms of the clarity around kind of pricing models as much as possible kind of helps kind of an easier conversation with clients. So there's clarity around what things will cost, and they can start kind of budget around that, and obviously measure their kind of the ROI accordingly, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But I think it's also kind of worth kind of highlighting, kind of because on the devil's advocate side of it, of course, as you touched on there, Charlotte, it's a new paradigm, particularly for carriers that are kind of used to a kind of a one-way per submit charge. It's a conversational messaging is very, very new for kind of a carrier product in that sense. And I think there's kind of, as you've absolutely touched on, there's going to be a bit of time when we work, everyone in the ecosystem works out what works best, for sure. Kind of another question I've seen asked kind of in the chat regarding Apple, and will Apple get involved alongside Google in brand approvals? And that's from Patrick. So I'll answer half of that, and then I might hand over to you, Alexander, to answer half of that, because you maybe can speak from a slightly more informed position than we can. Given what you can and can't say, of course, we totally appreciate that. So generally, Google is only involved in any brand approvals in a decreasing number of cases, on a decreasing number of carriers. Historically, they have been responsible for an awful lot, but those carriers where Google do approve the brand on are decreasing as more and more carriers take ownership and responsibility for the approvals to their carriers. So for the most part, in most markets, and it's certainly the case in Germany, for example, with Alexander, the carriers are responsible for that brand approval. So as such, Apple do not have a direct role in that approval. They kind of fall under the banner of the carrier approval, I say them being the gatekeepers of the system. But maybe, Alexander, that's something you can expand on a little bit, just in terms of the kind of process that you have to manage brand approval. What kind of guidance you would typically take into kind of allowing a brand into the ecosystem in Germany?
Yeah. So we as telcos, we see us more like gatekeepers to really make sure to create a secure and safe and clean communication channel. As you know, SMS, there are many scams out there, and this is what we don't want at the RCS. Also, email, all of these channels are good channels for scam, and so we are really have to make sure that RCS is a clean and secure channel, and that's what we are doing in the brand approval. We really check every single agent, the use case, the brands. So we need some information. So Infobip helps out on that. But at the end of the day, we approve the agent, and with that, you're ready to go.
For sure. And do you foresee kind of a future where that approval is managed outside of your own group, kind of as individuals, and maybe that's managed by third parties? Obviously, there's kind of a number of third parties that provide brand verification and the like, and I know different markets have different approaches. Is that something you see supporting the scaling of the ecosystem?
What we see today, or there are 3 big brands in Germany with Vodafone, Telefonica, and us, and our brands are responsible for building trust to connect people, and we have to make sure to make this happen in a secure way. So today I would say this is our to do to make this sure, and that's why I also see the agent process in our hands.
Gotcha. That makes perfect sense. I'm acutely conscious of time, so I kind of want to slowly kind of draw things to a conclusion. Maybe before we go, another scan. Brilliant, that just popped up. So yeah, go for the scan while it's still there. Only 8 minutes left. While we're kind of just, I say, wrapping things up, I was asked recently what I thought was the killer feature for RCS. I mean, there's an awful lot there, and I have my opinion, but I'll maybe share that later. Let's see. But it'd be interesting to know from each of you what you see as the killer feature for RCS, and that might be something that's available now, or might be something you want to be available in the future. And maybe we can get that pushed through the GSMA as quickly as possible, by the power of thought, if nothing else. So maybe Martin, starting with yourself, be good to know from your perspective what you see as that killer feature for RCS.
I would say the carousel, because it opens a lot of possibilities by the choice of the card that we can display while integrating photos, videos, and also click to calls. So carousel is very powerful to display several products, several promotions in the same message. And the killer feature that I would expect to come for the future is a built-in payment solution. So Google Pay, for example, Apple Pay, for example, if possible one day. But the day that RCS will support every payments min will be a big day, because I think the whole customer experience could be supported through RCS very soon, and it will be a very powerful channel the day that it will be made possible.
No, really some really good points, Martin. Maybe Charlotte, from your perspective, be interesting to say your killer capability.
I think for me, the killer feature is and always has been verified sender. I think that knowing that your carrier, and as Alexander just mentioned, carriers are very, very trusted. They are one of the most trusted businesses that we deal with. Knowing your carrier has ensured that the business who has sent you a message genuinely is your bank, or is the retailer you've been dealing with, or genuinely is your travel agent. I think that's a really, really powerful thing. And I think that the verified sender really is what is going to open the door for conversational commerce. I think that is the foundation for changing how B2C messaging is used.
Yeah. And Alexander, from your perspective as well.
So the biggest one is SSZ. This is 18.1, and it's pretty good working. This was my killer feature, but what I'm also really looking for is, today we're talking always about A2P, and in the future, in the near future, I need QR codes to join the session, because there were also some questions about opt-ins, and with that you get the opt-ins. And especially if you at the POS, and the QR code is a very strong solution for RCS.
That's really interesting because you've kind of touched on driving people in, and Martin there touched on kind of the conclusion of the journey around payments. That's kind of topping and tailing. For what it's worth, I'm kind of at the moment at least, I'm in Charlotte's core here. I think as well the verification and the branding, and actually for kind of but for a slightly different reason, because I think particularly as the channel's growing, that consumer recognition is going to be probably one of, if not the biggest catalyst for bringing brands into the ecosystem. I think of a scenario where I receive a message from a delivery company and it's branded and verified, and I implicitly trust it because of that. And then when I receive a SMS message from a different delivery company, I actually trust that a little bit less because it's not branded and verified, because I've already seen branded and verified. So then I think we'll start to see almost like an undermining of SMS and some of the messaging there that brand consumers will start to bring brands over into that channel. So yeah, I think it's really interesting kind of points there. Any last words for anyone? We are 2 minutes down. I want to drag it out a little bit just to make sure someone else scans that QR code in the top left. I think I'm incentivized on it, and I've got the annual review coming up in a couple of weeks. So if we can get a couple more scans on it, that'll be brilliant. But yeah, any other points before we close from anyone? All spoken out, which is fantastic. I think I'd just then take the opportunity maybe to plug a kind of a couple of other points. We do have a white paper that Infobip recently published with Omdia that was, I think, was released, if not last week or maybe earlier this week. So I think that might be in chat. If not, it's certainly on shared on our LinkedIn. We will be having further RCS webinars. So if you're not already following Infobip on LinkedIn, please do, because we'll obviously announce those through our page and give opportunities to register for that. And just finally, firstly, thanking all of the audience who've joined the webinar and have listened so intently to us and kind of shared some really interesting chat and comments in the chat. But most importantly, thank you to Charlotte, Alexander, and Martin. I think your comments, your feedback, your input's been amazing. I think really interesting to hear from, the different areas of the ecosystem, bringing different points of view. But I think it's been a really kind of positive and constructive chat. So thank you very, very much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you very much. Enjoy your evening.